Hello, and thank you for watching the show. I'm Laura McLaughlin, and my guest today is psychologist and relationship expert Dr. Debra Mandel. So if you've ever been curious about intimate relationships, you found the right place. Dr. Debra has over 20 years of experience working with clients. She's a published author of 4 books, and she regularly appears on television and radio shows as a guest expert on relationships and other various topics. So I am thrilled to have her with us today. Yeah, I think you and I met about 10 years ago while I was still doing my internship at a treatment center.
2009. Unbelievable.
Wow. And I developed an immense amount of respect for you, both professionally and personally. So thank you so much for joining me today.
And I loved your work. I mean, you were the highlight there in terms of all the therapists. Absolutely. Hands down.
Hey, you never know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because you're so dynamic and you have so much personality that you bring into the therapy room, which is just so special.
There you go. Well, thank you. Maybe that's why I was attracted to you too.
Yeah. Great minds.
Speaking of the therapy room,
yes.
I would like to know what relationship issues you see single people dealing with when they come to you.
Do you know what's really funny? It's how to get a date. This online dating stuff is a disaster.
Yes.
I think originally it was set up to be something that would make, a lot of people accessible very quickly to people, but it's been just horrible. Just absolutely, because they have so many options. People they get tied up into texting and almost never pull the trigger to actually ask for a date. I have all these young women that are they're falling apart because they go out with somebody once and the person never calls and they think they had a great time.
Yeah.
So that's really hard. But once they are accepting that they can find some dates and they're doing that, single people, they feel very self-conscious. They often judge themselves next to people who are in relationships. Sometimes they feel inadequate, low self-esteem, as if a relationship, particularly for women, is what defines their value.
So you find that mostly with women?
More so with women.
More so with women.
But remember, 3 times as many women come to therapy than men.
I didn't know that statistic.
So we don't know exactly how many men are out there feeling the same things, but they're not going to come in and pour their hearts out about it as much.
Yes. Yeah.
In fact, I don't think I've ever had a guy come in single and that his being single was a problem. Interesting.
That is very interesting. Okay. Well, we don't know how many men are out there just lonely and looking for help. So for those singles who are ready to find love and maybe have had some disappointment, whether it's in the online world or via text, which is a real problem in our dating world.
Hey, all you'd have to do is swipe. This Tinder and Hinge and all these apps, you just keep swiping. We're going to have problems with the fingers eventually.
Yeah,
I think. Anyway.
It's very impersonal.
So somebody's ready to date.
So someone's ready to date and they've experienced some disappointment. How do you think they can prepare themselves to be open for finding a healthy relationship or new love?
I think the most important thing is to not do the pendulum swing. Not judge your previous relationship as it was all bad because of those qualities that you maybe found to be very inviting to begin with, and then you found yourself repulsed by them, or they were more of a challenge than you thought. You say, oh, I don't want that. No, a lot of times we're very complex, and we want 2 things. We want our independence. We also want to be attached to somebody. We want to be strong, but we also want to be able to be soft. We want a guy who's fierce out there in the business world, but we also want somebody who's open-hearted. Or a man may want a woman who's very nurturing and such, but he also wants her to be able to take charge. So it's really trying to have a well-rounded idea of who you are and what your array of needs are, and not limit them to just 1 or 2.
So no black or white thinking, no extremes.
Number 2, identify what your non-negotiables are, because a lot of times we end up in relationships, we realize that the either yellow flags or red flags right away, and we say, I'll get him to change. I'll get her to change. It's not going to happen. So looking for potential, unless somebody else says, this is what I'm working on and I'm going to get there, and you know that they're already conscious of that and on top of it, don't hold out for that hope. It's not going to happen.
Oh, see, I see a lot of clients holding out for hope.
Of course.
Yeah. And it's important to sometimes, as a therapist, dash those hopes and get them with reality. So,
but don't make that non-negotiable list the size of the Mississippi River, because then you're not going to find anybody. So we do have to make some compromises. So, determining that you're not going to go out with somebody because they like pepperoni on their pizza and you like mushrooms, not a non-negotiable.
Okay.
Shouldn't be anyway.
Yes.
Right?
Question. Now, red flag is if someone's abusive or, whether it's verbally, physically, that's a red flag, is dating someone else. What are some yellow flags that you would consider? So
I'd say somebody who's kind of self-absorbed, also known as narcissists, would be people to watch out for. So a yellow flag is also somebody who's not very a good listener or very compassionate or understanding. Some people don't need a lot of that, but other people who I would call the tender-hearted or sensitive-hearted, they do actually need somebody to be thoughtful about their feelings and attentive, not necessarily agree on everything, right? I think that's also a problem if somebody wants agreement all the time in a relationship as opposed to understanding, because we can provide understanding and we can certainly empathize with people's feelings, but that doesn't mean that we have to see everything the same way all the time.
Okay, so there's a difference between agreement and understanding. Got it.
I think also somebody who presents with kind of different values than you have. That's why it's important to define who you are and be very self-reflective before getting back into a relationship. Spend some time alone. Ask your friends, who are you? What do they see in you? What kind of qualities do they think that you should be looking for in a relationship?
Interesting. So poll your friends.
Yeah, I think so. The good ones, the ones who aren't backstabbers, right? But then those shouldn't be your friends anyway. Some of the same things apply to friendships as they do to intimate relationships,
right?
That I'm talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, you had mentioned The Sensitive Heart. I just finished your book, Healing the Sensitive Heart. If you want a book on relationships, read Healing the Sensitive Heart. As a therapist, I recommend it, and personally, I wish I found this years ago.
Oh, you're so sweet.
When I was still dating. Now, you talk about childhood wounds having an effect on our adult relationships. Can you talk more about that and a little bit about what that book is about?
Yeah.
What inspired you?
Yeah, so it's important to understand that a sensitive heart does not necessarily correlate exactly with being super sensitive. Some people can be very sensitive, but a sensitive-hearted person is somebody who's been wounded along the way in childhood, and their heart becomes tender, and they're maybe doubtful of themselves, low self-esteem, whether they've been abused or neglected or just kind of ignored. There's a lot of things that can be wounding to children. And when we think about how little children are, and if you have these parents or caregivers who really don't have your best interest at heart or are too busy and preoccupied with their own emotional wounds, they're not able to be there for you. That's what creates a sensitive heart. So it's important to recognize what those wounds are and heal them. And how we heal them is by learning about what they are, identifying them, making a relationship and a connection to your inner child or to your vulnerable self, and learning how those wounds become a magnet for attracting people of the same. So what we really want in life is a different outcome if we didn't have a good go in childhood. But what we end up doing is attracting people with the same qualities and then wondering, how did we end up so unhappy again?
Got it. Now, you really do a great job of telling the reader how they can heal the wounds. Are there some first steps for people who are feeling a little bit, say, low self-esteem? They keep attracting the same person, someone who reminds them of their father or their mother. They say, gosh, I can't get any luck. How can they start?
Let's say like a child who has a father who's a big poker and a teaser and is constantly, playing around, and the child actually feels insulted and like, why can't my dad just be soft and warm and cuddly with me, a protector? Instead, he's actually making me uncomfortable. That we wouldn't call that abuse, but it certainly can create a sense of, can't somebody take me seriously? Can't I actually just be nurtured?
And it depends on the nature of that particular child.
Yeah, the temperament.
The temperament of
Absolutely.
the child.
Yeah.
So I think people don't give themselves that freedom to say, that's just not my temperament.
Right.
Or, I reacted this way to this kind of person differently.
You'll love to see a 3-year-old go look at their dad and say, Dad, it's not my temperament for you to be able to tease me that way. Oh, yeah. Only. Although I will tell you, my daughter, when she was 3 years old, she looks at me and she says, I'm not going outside and I'm not negotiating. I
Really?
like teaching her big words when she was.
She's your daughter.
Yeah. And she understood what that
Yeah.
word was. She used it absolutely appropriately. So anyway, I mean, I don't want people to get all nervous here about, childhood affecting everything that happens in your adult life, but it does have a big influence. We have to connect the dots. So healing that shame is an important step. Recognizing that you are not alone in this. So many people struggle with these things, but you have to learn how to take responsibility. Another really important part of healing is to recognize where you are on the continuum of having what I call a bruised heart versus a sensitive heart versus a thriving heart. And with a bruised heart, basically feeling like a victim all the time. And even though you've grown up, you're independent, you have your own life, you're still determined by your sense of being a victim as a child. And it's important to keep on moving on the continuum. So the next step is understanding your sensitive heart, which is taking a little bit more responsibility and recognizing that you are a survivor of these things. But again, as a survivor, we're still in a minimal security prison. Thriving is when we're free, when we have choices, when we can do things because we're choosing to do things and we're not determined by the events of our childhood or of our past.
And it's about taking responsibility for yourself.
Absolutely.
And that's really what we foster in our clients is as an adult, not living as an emotional child.
Absolutely.
So,
and when we're thriving, we're so much more attractive to the people we're trying to attract because we can be independent, we can be solid in our own selves, but we're then open and ready to invite love because we're not afraid of it. Because we also recognize that if it goes south, we get out.
And it's not the end of things.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
We're not devastated. We have a solid sense of ourselves. Good. Well, thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, of course.
I'm just going to hold up the book. So for those of you, Healing the Sensitive Heart, I recommend this for anybody dealing with intimate relationships and self-understanding. Can you tell the audience where they can find out more about your other books and also about your media appearances?
Yeah, probably the best place is my website, which is www.drdebraonline.com, DRDEBRA online.com. Do we even have to say the www anymore?
I guess I don't think we do.
I don't think we do.
Yeah.
Okay, so drdebraonline.com.
Good.
And there's all kinds of media appearances on there and my books and information about my practice and all that.
Wonderful. It's a great website. All right.
you.
Thank you, Dr. Debra.
Thank you.